Hey everyone, welcome to my weekly Q&A podcast for tlcbarrels.com, and this is for my Facebook online coaching group. Today is November 5th of 2025. Wow, what a moon last night. If anybody saw that, that was gorgeous. This is episode number 273, and this is YouTube number 17, meaning that I've only done, for 5 years, I've been doing Spotify podcasts. And just 17 weeks ago, I decided to put them on YouTube as well, just to be a little more personal so you can see me once a week. And I'm not just the voice behind all the video critiques. So I hope you guys like that. You can still just listen at Spotify or Apple, your favorite podcast, because it's downloaded to both the YouTube and the Spotify. So it's convenient for everybody, because we have been going for over 5 years now, 5.5 almost, and we have had, we're in 33 states and 5 countries with 100 active members at all times and almost 400 signups. So it's been great to be a part of everyone's journey. That's my favorite part, and has always been my goal since I started TLC in 92 to help horses and riders just have better relationships and help them meet their goals and hope their dreams come true. So with that said, I do want to welcome a couple new members. In Tennessee, we have Crystal and Ryder. In Florida, we have Tiffany. So welcome to you. I've decided to make our word or our woe. I'm going to do it a little different this year for the new year coming. I'm always trying to think what would help the group improve, and mental game is a big part of it. And to me, there's no better mental game than getting it right from the source itself and through God and Jesus Christ. So I'm going to make our word for 2026 for the group faith. And to have faith in all the hard stuff, not to have doubt, to believe that God can help you through all of the hard stuff. And I think that gives you a peace of mind to go forward, that you are strong and you can get through whatever goals and dreams you've set up for yourself to be able to accomplish them. And even if that doesn't happen on the time frame you're hoping for, it still is a possibility, and to have faith that it can happen and will happen in time. So keep that in mind. And our instead of a slogan, our word is faith, but instead of a slogan, we'll do a scripture, and that is Matthew 19:26. All things possible through Jesus Christ. And I just love that. All things are possible through Christ. And I just think that's a great way to remember. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the weekly podcast the same as always, go through any reminders, do the questions that come in the last week, and then a topic. And then I'll finish with a quick weekly Bible study. If you want to take part in it, I'll tell you which scripture I'm reading that week, and maybe 3 or 4 questions, and then sign off as always. So it won't take more than 5 minutes of the podcast, but it's just something to add to your mental game, because once you've done all your training, once you've done all your hauling for exhibition and entering, now you're in the seasoning process. And that's sometimes the hardest part, because it's education with speed, it's different arenas, and seeing what you and your horse are. And so you really need how your teamwork is in those different arenas and setups and pressured runs of maybe bigger venues or higher competition, all of that. So your mental game becomes a huge part of it. And that's why I feel like you have to have a very positive attitude. And we've been talking about that for 5 years, and believing in yourself. And every year we've had a word that I think is important. And every year around this time, going into the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, the NFR, all of that, we always do reflection from the previous year and start setting up our plan for the new year. So that's what we'll be doing for the next several weeks, 7 weeks, whatever it is. So it is, November 5th? So probably about 8 weeks, I guess, into the new year. So I can't believe how fast this year has gone. So that's going to be what we do. Sorry about the puppies running out the door. The topic this week is about size, style, and stride on the pattern, and understanding how each of your horses might require something a little bit different, or understanding how you might want to be training your horse to help you improve. So, of course, with November, we always think of Thanksgiving and gratitude. So I think it's a great time, if you don't already do it every morning when you wake, to give thanks for something that you're thankful for in your life. And I just think it starts the day in a very positive manner. So keep that in mind as we're doing our goal setting for next year. I did do the drawings for the winner of the training challenge and the personal best. Jeannie and Maggie in Florida won the training challenge, and the personal best drawing was won by Dee and Pearl in Missouri. So Florida, Missouri, and Dee chose the 1 month free, and I'm not sure what Jeannie's picked yet, but congratulations to everybody. We had, I think, 21 personal bests, and I think at least 12 people took part in the training challenge, sending me a video. So don't forget the training challenges for November. We're doing 2 parts. We're doing dry work of rib cage control and drill of one-handed drills, all lefts, all rights, preferably with 3 or 4 barrels. And if you don't have space for that, you can do it with 1 or 2 barrels and just working on one-handed riding. I do mostly promote riding 2 hands between the barrels and 1 hand around. But because people sometimes drop their rein, maybe 2 or 3 strides before the barrel, it's nice to know that you can ride your horse into the hole with your horse being balanced. And it kind of tattles on you if you're using too much reins, too much hands, outside rein or any of that, or even inside rein. It'll tattle on you on all of those things. It'll tattle on you if you're looking in instead of straight ahead. So one-handed drills are just a great way. Now, I don't mean you can't modify it. Some of the advanced people can do the entire pattern one-handed. Some of the beginners, you can do 2 hands between, one-handed around. And one-handed around is really important so that you do get your horse working off your eyes, your shoulders, your hips, your seat, and your hands and legs and voice just back that up. But majority, 80% is done with your eyes and your body. So anyways, go ahead and practice those things. Those videos have been put in, and diagrams and videos have been put into the group. I think I posted them with Monday's announcements in the group. If you can't find it, just let me know and I'll tag you in it. Let's see what else. So I've got some interviews coming up. Sherry with Horsepower, she's chiropractic, does equine chiropractic and MagnaWave. And then Ashley, she does equine massage and Beamer. So we'll be talking to them hopefully this month or next. And of course, if you'd like to recommend anybody for an interview, just send them my way. I hope to do at least 1 a month in the 2026 plan, and I've been getting good feedback that you guys are enjoying the interviews. So, and it can be, trainers. I even plan to interview some of our members, like, some of our inspirational members, maybe like Gigi and Barbara, that are in their 70s and still clocking and out there competing, and just let you guys hear from them if they're willing to do that. So hopefully they'll be open to that. I love to celebrate our members, or maybe some of our members who are first year of barrel racing and things are going really well and want to share their experience. So we'll be doing that as well. Let's see here. But I do plan to, get a hold of bit makers and saddle fitters and all of those things as well, and do some of those kind of interviews. Let's see here, saddle makers, things like that. All right. So I think that's about all for the updates. Oh, for the mindset is going to be, your focus back on 2025 and see what goals you did or didn't meet and why, and then make your plan and pick your word or your slogan or your scripture for 2026. And we will be going through this a lot more next week through the performance tracker and helping you get organized for the new year ahead. So of course, you don't have to use mine. You can make your own journal. You can order some fancy journals. Mine are at $10 off Amazon or you can even get them for free and just print them, the ones I sent you when you signed up in an email. So that's fine too. And you just put them in a 3-ring binder. And so that works too. So let's get into the questions for today. When to bump 2-hand or 1-hand, education for speed with rate for the novice versus the open horse. So that one is such a challenging one for people because, at home, they're like, my horse works great at home, but then when I get to barrel race, things fall apart. There's a couple of reasons that happens. At home, you're both more relaxed. At home, you may have a different ground. Maybe it's deeper, things like that. Also, you're both confident at home. So when you go to new arenas and you're dealing with an arena that's maybe harder ground, or you're feeling more pressure and nerves because it's about time to compete. Your horse is a little more on the muscle because they know the difference between a practice and a real deal. All things kind of go out the window a little bit. And that's the seasoning process. That's the education with speed. But I can tell you this, the better your foundation is, the better your drills are. And I'm talking about the little details. Can you walk, trot, and lope a perfect 10-foot circle one-handed with rib cage bend and your horse in good form, front and back feet on the same tracks, guiding the nose in with a light hand, just where you see eye or nostril, the shoulders picked up and out, the ribs are out, the hip is in, the pivot's under, the shoulders are reaching, the butt is driving, and it's collection, lateral bend, and four-wheel drive, forward motion. Back out to an extended big circle, and then back to that collected circle. It doesn't have to be rocket science. If you have I'll talk about that in the topic today, and I'm going to go over that, so I won't do it now. But you definitely, and you'll probably get more out of the topic today too for this question. But it's definitely a process. Now, remember, when you go faster, things happen faster. So if you're sending your horse harder out of the barrels, you may have to sit and bump them 2 hands and say, whoa, to set them on their butt, or easy, or hey. Or your horse might already be very collected, and a 1-hand bump is enough. But you don't do a 1-hand bump on a horse that gets too bendy. You're better to do a 2-hand bump and collect them and put them on their butt. Because if you do a 1-hand bump, you could overflex the head and necks and swing the butt. So 2-hand bump is generally what I recommend, and not hard. Remember, when you sit down, your hands are going to come back towards the saddle horn anyways. So just make a light contact with both reins as you set them on the butt before you go to the horn. And that usually is enough to remind them to come back to you with your body, voice, and the contact on the reins as you're adding speed. Now, a lot of times a novice horse versus open horse, they may need you to say more whoa or more when to rate, when to turn, because they don't know how to do it themselves with speed. Where your open horse hunts a barrel more, they rate a barrel more, they actually get where they are doing it sometimes before you ask them. That's the difference between a push horse or a free runner. A push horse, you have to sit up longer and drive up in the hole and, make sure you're square and you get them all the way to spot 1 with your leg before they turn. And you're generally looking well past the barrel at the fence to keep them riding and driving past the barrel. Where the free runner that may be hunting a barrel but not as naturally ratey, you may have to sit down 3 or 4 strides out and say whoa or make a 2-hand or 1-hand bump. And again, I prefer 2 over 1 for most horses so they don't get over bendy. Your inside leg should bend the rib cage at spot 1. Going in the entrance of the turn. You may even use it at your first stride of rate as well if you feel like you need to remind them to stay forward motion and not turn too soon. You might do one last inside leg kick and then squeeze around in the hole. And then your inside leg comes off around spot 2 so that you can put your outside leg on if you need it between spot 2 and 3 or at spot 3. And that's really important to understand. And that's one of the other questions, which is next, which I'll do next. But the next question is about if you should do slow work on the barrel in squares or circles. Okay, so the reason most of the time I do lateral bend around the barrels on most horses is most horses can get stiff and sticky. And they get a little bit too turny at their shoulder. So There are some horses, though, that get too bendy. So those bendy horses, I will do squares around the barrel. So I go to spot 1, stop when my leg gets there, and then keep them in a square to spot 2. So you're not bending them laterally, you're just riding straight. And there's videos on that too in the members only website. And then you square to spot 2, square to spot 3, and then leave straight out. So I would do squares for horses that are A, too bendy, or B, drop onto their front end and want to turn at their shoulder. I would also do it for a third reason. A really hot horse that can't relax at the barrels, I would stop at spot 1, stop at spot 2, stop at spot 3. Where if I'm just working on squares on any other horse, I might just walk the square or jog the square, or even possibly lope the square. But for the hot horse, I'm going to stop at spot 1, 2, and 3 as I'm doing my squares. But I prefer, personally, I like lateral bend in the hole, and then I like them to pivot out at their pivot spot off my inside hip and leave straight. So that's what I prefer, and that's what I'm going to talk about with the next question. So pivoting too soon. It's very important you know where your pivot spots are. There's a diagram in the members only website, also in the group. If you search TLC spots, you can see that diagram. Ideally, you want your horse to stay in four-wheel drive, reaching with their shoulders, pushing with their hips throughout until you get to where the straight part of leaving the barrel is. So the pivot spot for first barrel and third barrel is as soon as they're straight between spot 2 and 3. The reason people hit barrels or blow out wide is they pivot in the hole instead of at between spot 2 and 3, or maybe they pivot late at spot 3. So it is important to know how to get your horse to work off your hips. If you just turn your shoulders and hips a little, you just want to ride spot 1 to spot 2. But if you let your inside hip, while you look for your next barrel, come back with your inside shoulder and hip and look, that feeling that inside hip, your horse is going to know that means snap out. And that's the pivot spot where they snap onto their pivot foot, their hind pivot foot, and they pivot out in a nice straight line. So on second barrel, it happens at spot 3. So a tick later because that's a full turn. So you have to stay four-wheel drive till spot 3. When their front feet get to spot 3, you look between spot 2 and 3, you look, turn your inside hip and shoulder. You may bump with your inside hand, bump with your outside leg, maybe say, hey, but you have to sit all the way until your horse is straight. That's another problem your people make. They get up before the horse finishes the turn, or they look around too soon. You want to make sure you're looking and riding to each quarter turn. Spot 1, spot 2, spot 3, look up. When you're going really fast, sometimes you only have time to go spot 1, spot 2, look up. Except if you hit barrels leaving, then you better focus on spot 3, especially on second barrel. And keeping your hand low and forward helps as well. You may on a novice horse bump to start a turn, then go flat knuckle in the middle of their neck, or bump to finish a turn back towards your saddle horn. But it is going to vary. So some people just do not know where their pivot spots are. So you do want to have that rib cage control. That's going to be important for your lateral bend and that four-wheel drive. That's where your circles are going to come in during the week when you do your big and small circles, whether you do it as dry work, with a barrel, no barrel, whatever. That's going to come in handy. And then the next one is about goal setting. And I already mentioned that we are going to go through the performance tracker next week as the topic. So we will be I will go over that in detail. Someone asked, how do I know how to get started and all of that. So I'm going to go through all of that with you guys next week as a topic. The next question, let's see, is about knowing your why. So a lot of people, the why is easy for them. They love horses. They love the sport, and they just love competing. For other people, their why might be even something different. They might want to make it to the NFR one day. They might want to be 1D or bust. They might want to make it to their circuit finals. They might want to win a super show. So those people, your slogan might be something like never give up, be gritty, always push yourself to the next level, be better today than you were yesterday. So my fierce competitors in the group, and we have those, yours might be something more like that. But those of you that maybe overthink or are too hard on yourself, you may want to pick something where you're trying to keep it more light and not be quite as hard on yourself. Like, the faith, or, your why could be, the horses and loving the sport. Love the horse first or something. That's what Ride with Heart represents, putting the horse first and giving 100% inside and outside, but remembering heart is like the most important thing a rider and a horse can have. So everybody's going to be a little different on that. And then of course goals will be, and that's what we'll talk about next week. The goals for the horse, goals for you, goals for your association, maybe the money you want to win, or points or standings, your calendar, your planning for your events, all of those things. So let's get into today's topic. Today's topic is about style. Okay, so there's 3 things to consider when you're putting your horse on the pattern: their size, their style, and their stride. There are little caddy horses out there that are 14 hands and they, have a smaller size. They have a smaller stride, and some of those horses are really rappy and catty around a barrel. Then you have your horses that are maybe your average horse. Maybe they're 15, 2, not the 14 hand horse, but 15, 15 hand horse. And they're a little bit more like a 4-wheel drive horse, and their stride's pretty average. And so that horse is going to need a little bit different. So for the little caddy horse that's really rappy, you mainly need a 6 to 8 foot arc and a 3 foot pocket around the barrel. For the average horse, you're going to probably want a 10 to 12 foot arc and a 3 or 4 foot spot 1 to 2. And then of course you have your Big Bubba, and that Big Bubba might have a huge motor. It might have a huge stride. This horse is closer to 16 hands. This horse may be more rollbacky and really want to drive off his hindquarters. And that horse might need a 12 to 15 foot arc and a 5 foot spot 1 to 2. But there are big 16 hand horses that can turn with 3 foot pockets. Same with, 15 to 16 hand horses that can do, I wouldn't say 10 foot arc, I would say 12 foot arc, and a 3 foot pocket can be done, as long as they ride straighter, longer up into the hole. That's important. So the things to consider are your arc, your spots 1, 2, and 3. The other thing to consider is your horse very bendy. Are they real stiff and rollbacky? Are they real butt dragger? Are they 4-wheel drive? Do they bend in the ribs? Are they front endy? And then you can decide, that's in addition to their size. You can decide on their style. Those are your styles. And then of course the size is obvious, from 14 to 16 hands. I've seen 1D champions as small as 14, as big as 16, and it really just depends on their heart, their mind, their try, all of those things. If they really want it and have that little bit of it factor. And they're usually, not always, but usually your top horses are a little quirky. They're a little bit maybe fractious or like things a certain way. They may have little things that they do outside the arena that you just look the other way because you're like, they're really good in the arena and they always do their job, so I'm going to let them have this. But you have to kind of pick and choose your battles with that intense barrel horse. I've known pro rodeo ladies that I've ridden with that their horses were so hot they could only walk or sit jog their warm up before their rodeo. They couldn't post trot or lope circles because their horses were just too hot. I've known barrel racers that won on horses they couldn't get on until the stock contractors calling their name to come down the alleyway. They'd hop on and go make the run. They must have like ice in their veins, because that would really stress me out. But everybody, is unique and different. And so what works for one may not work for another. I don't believe in cookie cutter training. I don't believe in one, style works for everybody. I think you have to figure out what your horse likes, what bit, what saddle, what warm up, what training, what routine, what schedule. You have to figure out what they like the best and do that. If you're training the horse, you'll figure that out as you go. If you bought one that's already made, then you want to get a notebook, and write down everything that seller did with that horse that kept them winning, from their diet, their care, their weekly schedule, to their warm up, the bit, the saddle, their mindset, their how they rode them on the pattern, and keep it and their maintenance, everything the same, diet, supplements, you name it. Write it all down, because you don't want to buy this winning horse and take it home and change everything and then be like, I don't know why we're not winning now. What went wrong. So you really need to be able to keep it the same. So that's important. And then when you're winning on your horse that you've made yourself, you have to realize when to cut the umbilical cord of, I'm not the trainer now, I have to be the competitor, and take off my training cap and put on my rodeo hat and trust this horse out there to do their job. And that's, something that is harder when you've trained them yourself, because you know every little detail about them. And sometimes you overthink it and you get in their way when you need to be like, you know what, I'm riding to my spots. I'm going to be in the moment. I'm going to trust them to do their job. When I say win, they do it, and that's how you ride that out. And that's something that just takes time. So let's talk about this again. Again, if it's a catty little horse, you could do the 6 to 8 foot arc with a 3 foot spot 1 to 2. The average horse, I usually train them 10 to 12 foot arcs with 4 foot spot 1 to 2. Spot 3 on second barrel, because it's a full turn. And then, like I said, on the Big Bubba, it might be a 15 foot arc and a 5 foot spot 1 to 2. So now that's not all horses. Again, it will be modified, and it is depending on if they're bendy. I had a client with a horse in training, 16 hands, but the sucker bent in half. He actually had a sway back, and he ran 1D, 2D with a sway back, a 16 hand with the smallest arc, and wrapped the barrels, a 6 foot arc and a 3 foot spot 1 to 2. Now, some people say, well, when I see people run, they're like rimming the barrels, like they could have paint on their pants. One thing, you're looking at where the rider's body is around the barrel, or where the horse is around the barrel. You got to look down at their feet, because the feet might be 3 feet away, but the horse leans in the turn. So that puts the rider and the horse much closer to the barrel. And that does happen a lot. Come here, you. Come here. The stressed out puppy here. What is going on with you? So, anyways, I think they got a squirrel in the tree or something. You stay here and be good. No more barking. So if you heard barking in the background, that was why. They're outside bugging a squirrel in the tree. Jack Russell's favorite pastime. So stay here, Gus. Let's see, Woodrow's still outside. So keeping that in mind, you have to think of the shortest distance from A to B is a straight line. But in the sense of that big horse that could wrap a barrel, he could take a more direct approach to his arc and still wrap a barrel with ease. But that same 16-hand horse that was stiffer and rollbacky and that wanted to slice the barrel and that would pivot out in the wrong spot or go topside needed the 12 to 15 foot arc and focus more on a 4 to 5 foot spot 1 to 2. So that horse needed a little more room to use their big stride and to stay 4-wheel drive. If you bunch up a rollback horse, you risk a couple things happening. You risk losing 3 things. You risk losing momentum. You risk hitting the barrel going in, or you risk driving them past it and stalling behind it. So actually there's even 4th thing, and then that causes pivoting out in the wrong spot where they kind of like V the barrel in the wrong place. They may V it in the hole and then blow out wide or catch the barrel coming in or out. So it is really important that you keep those stiff and sticky horses during the week, flex and fluidity and perfect 4-wheel drive circles. If you have a horse that's over bendy, that horse, you might do more straight line work. You might do like inline barrels where you go from straight lines into circles. You might use more your rein on your hand on the center of the rein, more outside leg, and less rein contact, more two-handed riding, things like that to keep that over bendy horse. You might use a bit that's got the port or a Mullen or a Jim Warner Hackamore, something that might stiffen them up more than the horse that you want to have a little bit more 4-wheel drive and lateral flexion. So again, everybody's a little bit different. But on average, you can go with most horses. I want to train every horse to be four-wheel drive. Now, will they all stay that way? I really don't like a horse that roll back super hard because they're really hard to ride. I really don't like a horse that really sets on their front end really hard. So I'm trying to think of horses that were like that. Haley and Sister, she can be very rollbacky. So she has to keep her sometimes a little bit more four-wheel drive, especially at the NFR this year. She can really pivot hard. Sherry Servey and Stingray was more of stiff rollbacky. But then you look at maybe Lindsay Sears with Martha, really bendy around the barrels, always had her nose turned into the inside around the barrel. The average horse that I prefer is, like I said, the four-wheel drive horse. They reach with their shoulders, push with their hips, they soften their rib cage, but they don't overbend the head or, they're not like a huge banana shape to them throughout the whole turn, but just a little bit of a lateral flexion going in and then a nice straight line coming out. Ideally is what we want to have. But again, it kind of depends. If I know I've got one that can really drag their butt in the turns, I definitely need to be thinking about hiney in the hole, riding not just their front feet where they want to turn the barrel at the shoulder, but riding their hind feet to the entrance in the backside, spot 1 and spot 2. If I can get their back feet to spot 1 and spot 2, I'm going to maintain forward motion and I'm going to get to my pivot spot on that horse that really drags their butt and really is their hind end, whether they're roll back or not. But dragging horses need that four-wheel drive. And again, if you crowd a horse that has a huge stride and a huge motor, they can't use it. They'll slow down. So like Lisa Lockhart promotes really riding into the hole. And that is really important to keep that one extra step into the hole. You think of Jarvis and how Jarvis rides and how she trains him to go up and really make sure he gets to his pivot spot. So her important place is Cassie is on the back of the barrel. Sorry, I was drawing a blank, but I don't know how. But on the backside, they make sure they've got that room on the backside to be able to drive out from their hindquarters. So hiney in the hole is a bumper sticker on my truck that one of my clients made for me, and that's truly what you want. You don't want them turning at their shoulder because their power is the caboose, and you need everything. You need four-wheel drive, reach with the shoulders, push with the hips. All of that's really, really important. So that's really what I wanted to share on that. What we want to look out for, we don't want rainbows going to our arc. Like we don't want to go all the way to third and then turn into the first barrel with a huge rainbow, but we don't want to go straight at the first barrel. So that's why you have to look at a pin. We want a gradual arc. If it's a long score, meaning the first barrel is way down the arena, you want to go up the middle, maybe 4 strides to the timer before you head to your arc. And then on a shorter score, you may only go up the middle 2 strides to the timer and then go to your arc. The barrel race starts at the timer, it finishes at the timer. So you can go middle to set yourself up good and then start gradually going to your arc from the timer to the first barrel. Again, depending on how long the score is, where the timer placements are from the first barrel. But 30 to 40 feet from the first barrel is a good time to start coming into your arc. But if you go right to the first barrel from the alleyway, I've seen so many people hit first or go up the fence because of that and get a bad go top side or whatever, have bad position. So think middle, then arc, then spot 1, spot 2, look up, spot 1, spot 2, spot 3, look up, spot 1, spot 2, look up, and then you're good to go. If I got my horses to their spots, I knew everything else would be okay. I could just be in the moment on when to say when. Like if they're lazy, maybe drive harder, smooch more. If they're running free, maybe back off and say here or something sooner. That stuff just happens in the moment. Your spots don't change. Your timing of when you say when does. When for rate, when for turn, when for drive. So that can make a difference. And you'd be surprised how much using your voice can really help. So I'm about ready to wrap this up on what I wanted to say there. But that basically covers the gist of it. Like I said, every horse is unique. You just have to find what works for your horses. And that's why you send me your video critiques. So I use the NIV Study Bible, is what I was given many, many years ago, and I work from, and I'm doing the little thing, the Bible in 52 weeks, And so what I'm going to give you guys, if you want to do this with me for your mental game for the new year ahead, yes, my pages on it, right? Pages here. Right. So again, I said I'll spend just a couple seconds or a couple minutes on this. Here we go. So for 2026, it's going to be faith, and nothing's too hard for God. And then, like I said, Matthew 19:26, all things are possible with Christ. And the first Bible study is Genesis 1 through 21. So all you have to do this week is read Genesis 1 through 21. And then I have 4 questions for you. And those 4 questions are, and you can write this down or listen to this again, the 4 questions. When faced with something that's impossible, how did you handle it? After you read that scripture, how do you plan to handle those impossibilities in the future? And write that down. You know, like maybe you cry and get stressed out, but then maybe you pray and you listen and then you make a new plan and you have faith that God can do this, that you can do this with God, that you have the strength to do so. Number 2, what has this lesson taught you about your faith after you read the scripture? And then that there, for me in my heart, I know it to be true, but then sometimes in your brain you let outside things in and that kind of messes you up. So what has this lesson taught you about your faith? This is number 2. Number 3, what areas have you discovered where you are strong in faith, and what areas have you discovered where your faith needs to be strengthened? Okay. And then number 4, after this lesson, what are some of the impossibilities that you will commit to prayer? So everybody has different things. So those are the 4 questions for you to do after you read Genesis 1 through 24. And then finally, the last thing is take action according to that, such as replacing doubt with positivity. And so that would be your thing. So read the scripture, replace doubt with positivity, answer those 4 questions, and did it help you trust God more? So that's about it for this week on our Bible study. And then I'm going to go ahead and close now. I want to thank all of the members that are a part of TLC. I'm always striving to be the best coach I can be, so your feedback's important to me. If you like the podcast and you like the challenges, let me know. If you have an idea or suggestion for something, let me know that too. And again, if you're new and you've never heard this before, you can subscribe by going to tlcbarrels.com. Otherwise, all of my members, if you refer a friend, I greatly appreciate it. This is how I make a living. And I trained horses for 27 years and compete as well. But the last 5 years, I've been 100% coaching lessons and clinics, of course, this online coaching group. And so anyways, again, the final thing I'm going to leave you with is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Remember that. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Thank you guys. God bless, and ride with heart.